As might be obvious from the name of my channel, everything about Trump screams out 45 to me, and it's not just him being the 45th president. There really is something odd about the number 45 itself. In fact, that is exactly how the name of this channel came about a couple of years back. In early 2019, I was considering starting a YouTube channel about Trump being the Antichrist. One day, as I was driving down a local road, a speed limit 45 sign caught my attention, and out of the blue, the thought of Antichrist 45 immediately popped into my head. I'm not saying that was a sign from God, mind you, only that the word Antichrist and the number 45 fit together perfectly. Somehow they were connected in a way that I didn't quite understand. Even now, whenever I see the number 45 pop up, whether on a speed limit sign or anywhere else, I think of the Antichrist. There's just something strange about the number 45, and I can't quite describe the feeling I get. It's like a bad vibe. I noticed a couple of recent articles about Trump embracing the number 45, with headlines ranging from the 45th, why Trump is abandoning his iconic brand for a number, to they can never take that number from him, how Trump is rebranding himself. Trump did, of course, embrace the number 45 early on in his presidency, as photos captured him having the 45 monogrammed on his dress shirts, and also with 45 emblazoned on the side of hats he wore. Pro-Trump clothing has been featuring the number 45 for a couple of years now. Everything from t-shirts to golf caps, from hoodies to even leggings, have featured the number 45. The wide variety of clothing that features the number 45 demonstrates the type of die-hard loyalty that Trump enjoys from his supporters, and how they also recognize the number 45 as being synonymous with Trump. A few weeks back, we saw the unveiling of the website 45office.com, perhaps Trump's way of telling his legion of supporters that number 45 is still in office. To many Trump supporters, Trump is the real president, and they simply do not recognize Biden as legitimately being in the White House. Even further, many Trump supporters have been rallying around the number 45 in recent months, as a statement that Trump didn't really lose the election. In their eyes, there is no number 46, only number 45. Trump recently had a photo up with Stephen Miller, the force behind much of the Trump administration's immigration policy. I know that the Bible doesn't mention an assistant Antichrist, but if it did, I might suspect Stephen Miller. The term dead eyes has never been more appropriate. Trump's picture with Miller came just a few days after Trump called on his supporters to boycott Coca-Cola and several other companies in response to how those companies were boycotting Georgia for its new voting law. Trump is, of course, a big fan of Coke and reportedly drinks up to 12 cans of Diet Coke a day. Knowing that, a large number of people happily pointed out that Trump tried to hide his own bottle of Diet Coke during that picture with Miller. The fact that Trump would tell his supporters to boycott Coca-Cola while he continues to drink it all day long is hardly a surprise. Everything about the Antichrist is based on lies, and hypocrisy is part and parcel of the way he conducts himself. In that same picture, observers pointed out that Trump had a mini statue of himself just behind Miller. As far as I'm concerned, it would have been more surprising if Trump didn't have a mini statue of himself in his office. My guess is that he has more than one. On Trump's desk, there's also a small wooden box. The box contains a custom-built, handcrafted pocket knife and features Trump's name and the presidential seal on the top of it, as well as the phrase, "the greatest president ever to serve America." The box was gifted to Trump by Representative Clay Higgins of Louisiana. Inside the box, an inscription reads, "Mr. President, this blade represents the 100 million strong band of brothers who stand ready with sharpened skills to preserve our great republic." There's nothing subtle about that, is there? Once again, we have Trump supporters reminding him that they are standing by, awaiting Trump's call to take action. And one day that call will come. It's just a matter of when and what Trump wants them to do. There's something else I noticed, however. Right in front of the hidden bottle of Coca-Cola, Trump had had a plaque on the corner of his desk that commemorated the border wall. And at the very top of the inscription, it said number 45, as if that was the most important item on the plaque itself. It's just the latest example of Trump and his supporters not only using the number 45 to symbolize him, but viewing it as the equivalent to his name. In other words, 45 is now more than just a number that represents Trump. It's the actual number of Trump's name. And this is reminiscent of the mark of the beast. In Revelation chapter 13, verse 17, we read, "And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." This verse specifically tells us that the mark of the beast will have three variations: the mark itself, the name of the beast, the number of his name. In order to buy or sell, someone will need to have one of these three variations of the mark. Coincidentally, Trump is now using three variations of his own name, and all three parallel the mark of the beast. First, like the mark mentioned in Revelation 13:17, Trump has a history of marking his properties with a simple T, and it shouldn't be lost on us that Trump's T bears a striking resemblance to the Christian cross. It mimics the cross, only without the head of the cross. Second, like the name of the beast mentioned in Revelation 13:17, Trump has a history of putting his name on products and properties all around the world. The name of the beast will be ubiquitous in the end times, and likewise, Trump never ceases to promote his name. Third, like the number of his name mentioned in Revelation 13:17, Trump is now telling the world that the number 45 will be the number of his name. 45 is his number, and it stands in place of his own name. Now, I know that some of you are thinking, wait, what about verse 18, which talks about the number 666? How does the number 45 relate to the number 666? Did you notice that verse 17 talked about the number of his name, while verse 18 mentions the number of the beast? I believe these are two different yet complementary numbers. The number of Trump's name, which is 45, is what will be a part of the mark of the beast mentioned in Revelation 13:17. It's one of the three variations we will see: Trump's T, which mimics the cross, Trump's name, or the number of Trump's name, which is 45. The number of the beast, which is 666, mentioned in verse 18, is pointing us to other specific parts of the Bible that help us to understand the exact identity of the beast and what his ultimate goal is, which involves the worship of gold and of the sun god, and I'll cover that in part 2 next week. In this video, we will look at Revelation 13:18, and specifically how the number 666 relates to Trump. To recap part 1, I talked about how Revelation 13:17 tells us that there are three variations to the mark of the beast: the mark itself, the name of the beast, the number of the name. And I talked about how Trump, with his recent embracing of the number 45, is now fulfilling all three of these variations, and how he marks his property all around the world: the letter T as a simple mark, his own last name or signature, the number of his name, which is 45. In case you're not too convinced that 45 is the number of Trump's name, I encourage you to rewatch part 1. Trump is essentially telling us that 45 is the number of his name, and we should listen to him. I'm convinced that the number of his name in verse 17 and the number of the beast in verse 18 are two different yet complementary numbers. One is a specific number, the number 45, which is one of the three variations of the mark of the beast. The other number, 666, means something much, much deeper. So let's look at Revelation 13:18. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. At first glance, verse 18 seems to be a bit odd. Why tell us that those with understanding should count the number of the beast, but then tell us that the number is 666? If the answer requires wisdom and understanding, why tell us what the answer is? We first need to understand the intended meaning behind the word count. According to Strong's Concordance, this word has a few different connotations, from counting with pebbles, to compute, to calculate, and to reckon. There's even a reference to voting by casting a pebble into an urn. In fact, there are those on YouTube who state that verse 18 is all about voting, and that people who vote for the Antichrist will go to eternal damnation. However, we must look at the entire context of the passage in order to understand if this is true. The verse is actually telling us what we should do. Let him who has understanding count the number of the beast. If count means voting, then the verse is stating, let those with understanding vote the number of the beast. This is completely nonsensical, of course. The Bible is not telling us to vote for the beast. Instead, by examining the entire verse, the word count clearly means to reckon the number 666. But more than that, it's telling us that the number is calculated to be 666. There's nothing further for us to calculate. The number is 666, and we are to reckon or consider the number because it's of special importance. Why is this number so important? Because this number is a signpost directing us towards another figure in the Bible, one that will give us a deeper understanding of the purpose of the Antichrist. Who is that other biblical figure? If we look at verse 18 a bit closer, there are 3 clues as to the identity of that person. Clue number 1. Here is wisdom. There is one figure in the Bible who had such great wisdom, he is considered to be the wisest man who ever lived. Clue number 2. Let him that hath understanding. The very same man with great wisdom that I just mentioned also specifically asked God for understanding. Clue number 3, 666. This same man, the one with great wisdom and understanding in the first 2 clues, also has a specific connection to the number 666. All 3 of these clues, wisdom, understanding, and 666, are pointing us to the same biblical figure, and that figure is King Solomon. As we know, King Solomon was an incredibly wealthy and wise ruler of Israel who succeeded his father, King David. Solomon is credited with building the first temple in Jerusalem, which, of course, was named Solomon's Temple. While Solomon had great wisdom, power, and wealth, he became extremely foolish, perhaps more foolish than any man has ever been. God gave special instructions to those who would be king of Israel, and the instructions are referred to as the 3 laws of kingship given in Deuteronomy 17, verses 16 and 17. He shall not multiply horses to himself, neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away, neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. Despite the astoundingly great wisdom and understanding Solomon possessed, he violated each of God's instructions on how a king of Israel should behave. Solomon desired a great number of chariots and horsemen, at one point having 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Solomon pursued greater wealth than he already had, specifically gold. Foreign wives turned his heart away from the Lord and toward the pagan gods that his wives worshipped. For it came to pass, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned his heart away after other gods. And the Bible names the various pagan gods that Solomon worshipped with his wives. In fact, this wasn't just limited to a few of his wives. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods. If there's one thing Solomon loved more than foreign women, it was gold. Solomon loved gold so much that he had hundreds of shields made out of hammered gold. And to directly connect the number 666 in Revelation to King Solomon, we have this verse. The weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. We now see that Solomon's gold was calculated to weigh 666 talents. The 18th verse is about King Solomon becoming a type of Antichrist. Here is wisdom. Solomon was the wisest man in the world. Let him that hath understanding. Solomon specifically prayed to God for understanding. Count the number of the beast. We are to reckon or consider this number, for it is the number of a man. The number points to one specific man, and his number is 666. The 666 talents of gold that Solomon received are a symbolic turning point for when this man of God became a type of Antichrist. But there's something even deeper to all of this. Revelation 13:18 is specifically pointing us to Solomon's gold, and there's a reason for doing so. All of these pagan gods that Solomon worshipped are themselves variations of and subservient to the one pagan god that nearly every culture in history has placed above the others, the sun god. And the sun god is identified with one specific thing, gold. Thus we have the number 666 in Revelation pointing us to gold, and gold itself is a representation of the sun god. Solar deities and sun worship can be found throughout most of recorded history in various forms. The sun was often viewed as the giver of life itself, and even within pagan religions where many gods were worshipped, the sun god was given a high status. The sun god is historically identified with gold, just like the sunshine is golden, and gold is the most valuable metal. To many civilizations that worship the sun, it makes sense that gold was seen as a valuable representation of the sun, given its shiny yellow attributes. In culture after culture, we see the sun god is either the most important god, or a major part of a larger group of pagan deities. For example, the 36 deacons of the zodiac are comprised of various demons, angels, and gods from a variety of pantheons. And yet the one thing that these pantheons all share is a sun god. The 36 deacons of the zodiac are interesting for yet another reason. The sum of the integers from 1 to 36 equals 666. Thus we have the 36 pagan deities of the zodiac representing or totaling a number that itself points to gold, which in turn is equated with the sun god. Revelation 13:18 is giving us insight into the true nature of the Antichrist by pointing us to King Solomon, and specifically the 666 talents of gold. The Bible is telling us that the final Antichrist will be obsessed with gold and with the ultimate pagan deity, the sun god. In fact, the Antichrist will see himself as the personification of the sun god. Just as happened with the golden calf of Aaron and the golden statue of King Nebuchadnezzar, the final Antichrist will also use gold to symbolize his own power and to honor the god of forces, the sun god. The Antichrist will soon proclaim himself to be either God or a god, and will also have an image that people must worship. We should expect this image to be either made of gold or involve gold on some level. It will be the ultimate golden idol, intended to honor the Antichrist as the sun god. Everything about Trump revolves around gold. From how focused the decor is on gold and its properties, to calling for the United States to return to the gold standard, to imagining himself as the modern-day Midas, with everything he touches turning to gold. There are those who poke fun at Trump's hair and facial color and who mock him as looking orange. But what Trump's going for is the golden look to his hair and skin. It's all about gold, even down to what he wants to see when he looks into the mirror. And make no mistake about it, Trump knows full well that gold is identified with the sun god. Trump already honors the sun god in his penthouse in Trump Tower, most noticeably with the large mural of Apollo on his ceiling. Trump sees himself as a type of Apollo, a magnificent and powerful god of forces who is able to achieve all that he wants. In his own eyes, Trump is the ultimate deity, the modern-day sun god, surrounding himself with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. Revelation 13:18 is telling us that the Antichrist will be a man obsessed with gold and the sun god. Everything about this man will revolve around the love and appearance of gold. Simply put, gold will be part and parcel of what the Antichrist is. Let no one deceive you by any means. Donald J. Trump is the Antichrist, and the day is coming soon when he will claim to be godlike. And when he does that, there will be one specific god that Trump will have in mind, the sun god.